Is your 1998 to 2013 Harley starting to feel like a relic? You know, the kind of bike where you've got more wires hanging off than a 1970s chopper with a cassette deck strapped to the sissy bar? Don't get me wrong, it's a great ride. But times have changed. With wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for your Harley. No wires, no more fumbling with your phone, no more clunky mounts, no more wondering if you're going to end up in the middle of nowhere. And here's the kicker. We're doing it all on a budget. So sit back, grab a drink, and buckle up. This is going to be a fun ride. By the end, I'll even show you how we made it rainproof because let's face it, riders don't melt in the rain, but your tech might. Alright, so here's the game plan. You're going to need a wireless CarPlay or an Android Auto setup, depending on your phone. Most of them work with both these days. You'll also need speaker adapters, a new double DIN fairing, fresh speaker grills, wiring harness, and a solid pair of 6.5-inch speakers. Oh, and don't forget a good attitude because tearing down your bike is half the fun. And don't sweat it. We've got all the links ready to go for you. Plus, stick around to the end because we're dropping some game-changing tips to make your install even better. Now, if you got deep pockets, you can grab one of those fancy pre-made kits. But we're not about that life today. This is a budget build, and the satisfaction of doing it yourself is worth every second. Okay, first things first, teardown time. And no, I'm not talking about ripping apart your self-confidence. We're talking about that inner fairing, the opening. A little snug. Next, it's windshield off, outer fairing off, and yeah, you're going to be unplugging some wires. The headlights come out, the lower deflectors get tossed out, and we're making room for a new setup. Look, I know it's a pain, but sometimes you've got to make a mess to build something amazing. Now, here's where the fun starts. We're ripping out the old radio. You'll need to get those side screws out, then start pulling brackets, wires, and anything else in your way. The ignition, yeah, it's got to go too. You'll need a key for this part, but don't stress. It's as easy as turning the key, pushing a release button, and popping it off. Feels good, right? Keep going until you've got all that old stuff cleared out. And don't forget about the clutch cable. You're going to slide it out of the old inner fairing, which means losing the clutch lever and giving it a little wiggle. Think of it as the bike equivalent of stretching out before a workout. Okay, take a deep breath. This is the part where we slow things down. Why? Because we're dealing with the gauges. You don't want to mess this up. Find yourself a comfortable spot, maybe a chair, maybe your favorite workbench. Now, carefully remove each gauge one at a time and make sure you're putting them in the right spot for the new inner fairing. Pro tip, don't over tighten. You're not locking down a safe here. The big gauges, the speedometer, and the RPM have rubber gaskets, so don't forget those. And while you're at it, swap the clutch cable gasket into the new inner fairing. Now comes the exciting part, sliding the shiny new inner fairing into place. Don't tighten the bolts yet. Just get them in there enough to hold everything together. Then slide the clutch cable through, get the odometer reset button in, and wiggle the whole assembly until it feels just right. It's like Tetris, but for bikers. You might need to remove a speaker to get everything aligned, but no big deal, just pop it off, adjust as needed, and get those brackets mounted. Remember, keep things loose for now, but it's all about that fine-tuning later. Alright, let's talk about the star of the show, the wireless CarPlay, or Android Auto. If you're working with a double DIN setup, you might find that the metal cover on the radio gets in the way of the bolts. No worries. We'll make some room. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but I'll show you an easy option. Warranty? Who cares about that, right? I mean, come on, are we building a bike or filling out some paperwork? Once the radio's ready to go, plug in your wires, stick the satellite antenna in a good spot, and do a quick test. If everything's working, give yourself a little fist pump. You're getting it. All right, now it's time to tighten everything up. Reinstall the ignition, snap it down, and make sure everything's aligned. Next, reinstall, Get your clutch cable back in place, and don't forget about the mirrors. The cigarette lighter socket, we're talking about the OG power outlet for your ride. First showed up in the 1920s. Back then, it was in all the luxury cars. If you had one of these, you were basically the Elon Musk of your day. Fast forward to the 1950s and boom, it's standard in pretty much every car on the road. But here's the thing, it didn't stop at lighting smokes. Over time, it became the go-to for powering everything from portable radios to those weird plug-in coffee makers your uncle swore by. These days, most of us are swapping them for the USB-C ports and calling it progress. Alright, history lesson over, let's get back to it. Secure the rubber trim around the new inner fairing with a little glue, zip tie the wires, and get ready to reinstall the outer fairing. Pro tip, lay a towel over the fender to protect it from scratches. Once the headlights snap back into place, start lining up all those bolts. Don't tighten them until everything's in position. Patience here will save you a lot of frustration. Alright, moment of truth. Fire it up. Check the gauges, test the radio, and admire your work. You've just turned your Harley into a masterpiece complete with wireless CarPlay, built-in navigation, and full compatibility with your Sena helmet system or other systems you may have. Before you take off, let's talk about those temps I promised. Here's the deal. A 6 or 6.5 inch screen might actually be the smarter move. Why? Because when you're out there on the road, being able to see the whole screen clearly at every angle is a game changer. And while we're at it, go for a brighter screen when the sun's blazing down if you can. Small upgrades like these make all the difference out on the ride. Alright, here's the thing. I'm all about my Sena Bluetooth helmet setup with the mesh technology. I really don't rely on the external speakers much. But hey, if you're the type who cranks the tunes for the world to hear, you might want to splurge on some higher end speakers. It's all about dialing in your ride to match your style. And looking back, let me drop one more tip for you. Spend that extra few bucks and throw in the conversion module to get those handlebar controls working. I think it's worth it. Having everything right at your fingertips when you're riding, that's nice. Oh, and remember the rainproofing I mentioned. Stick around, we'll dive deeper into that in another video. But for now, go take a ride, show off your new setup, and maybe blast some tunes while you're at it. That's it for today, folks. You've just upgraded your Harley and saved tons of cash in the process. Catch you on the next one, where we'll keep pushing the limits of what your bike can do. Ride safe.